Hello and welcome to my presentation. Today I'm going to be talking about barriers to quality early education for diverse students. My name is Amanda and I am a general and special education teacher. I've been teaching preschool for about 13 years and 9 of those years have been in Cedar Rapids Public Schools. I teach in an inclusive classroom. So that includes special education students, general education students, ELL students, students from a diverse variety of backgrounds. So this topic is very near and dear to my heart. This is kind of the layout of my presentation. I'll give you a background of early education, also as it relates to diverse students. I will touch on some issues in early education for diverse students and then provide some solutions and recommendations to breaking down barriers for these students and then wrap it up with final thoughts. To start with a little bit of background, I just wanted to highlight a few key points. It's obvious that classrooms are continuing to grow in diversity. And just based on the research that I found, by 2043, a majority of the U.S. population will be people of color. So, of course, that means the students coming into our classroom are going to be more diverse. And that includes dual language learners. In addition, I wanted to highlight that early education affects future success, not just for students, but also for families. High-quality childcare and early education are critical to children's development and family economic stability. I think it makes sense that if families have a safe place for their children to learn and to grow, then they're able to focus on working, having an income, and providing for their family. And then last, I just wanted to touch on teacher demographics. A majority of educators are white. For the 2021 school year, about 80% of teachers were white. So I just wanted to highlight that because we know that classrooms are becoming more diverse, yet the teacher workforce is still a majority white. So there is a little bit of a gap there. Just in background, there might be a gap in background knowledge for teachers as far as their diverse students are concerned. I thought it might be important to provide a little bit of the history of early education. Just important to note that it hasn't been around that long, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. But in about the 1940s, a federal act was created. And this was really out of necessity so that women could work while men were fighting overseas in World War II. 1965 is when the federal Head Start program was created. And that was to address the educational and developmental gap between children in poverty and their peers. And then in the 1980s is when state-funded preschool programs started to pop up as part of education reform. But this is still currently going on. In the 1980s, obviously not every state started a pre-K program. So this has slowly been happening over time. And then in 1988, Congress passed a Child Care Act that would provide families who are receiving assistance with child care support. But it is important to note through all of this that there still have been barriers for diverse families to access child care, even though it has become a federal and state issue. So I wanted to include this quote from Johnson Staub: "Historical and institutionalized racism, which manifests in systemic and structural barriers to equitable access to opportunity, lead to pronounced disparities in socioeconomic experiences for a large share of America's children." So just important to note that underlying all of these things that are happening in early childhood is the fact that there's still institutionalized racism, and that provides a sort of gap or disparity for students, especially diverse students. Moving on to issues in early childhood. Starting out with this quote that I won't read the whole thing to you, but I just wanted to highlight that more, and this was in 2011, so this is when I started teaching, more than half of African American children and 63% of Hispanic children that were preschool age did not attend preschool. And this wasn't too long ago, but that's a lot of kids not in a preschool program, a lot of diverse students. So already those kids are going to have a little bit of a gap in knowledge and school readiness skills when they enter kindergarten, as opposed to their peers who have been through a preschool program and are learning those skills. And that kind of leads into students being able to access early childhood. Diverse students in particular struggle with access to affordable early childcare and education. And in turn, they're being often described as not entering school with school readiness skills. And I had mentioned that state-funded programs were started as part of education reform, but it's important to note that those programs really vary state to state as far as requirements for the program, who they're going to allow in as far as like which ages, locations, geographically where they're located, and their funding. I teach in a public statewide preschool program, and at the beginning of this year, our program had a wait list of about 60 kids. We're one of few programs in our area. We provide all-day care and education. We provide transportation. And again, knowing that we're one of the few in our area and that there's 60 kids waiting who might be without a program if they can't get into ours. So that's a lot of kids entering kindergarten without having experienced school yet. So that was the first issue I wanted to highlight. The second issue is how we're preparing educators to teach diverse learners. I think both of these issues are important in a high quality early education program. First of all, kids need to be able to have access to it. And then when they do, they need to have a teacher that understands how to teach them using their background. Again, classrooms are becoming more diverse. The educator workforce is lacking in diversity. So it's important to note that a lot of teachers are coming in unprepared and kind of unsure of how to teach students who speak multiple languages, who come from very different backgrounds. So I want to touch on solutions that I've come up with to address these issues. And my solutions are mandating culturally competent professional development for educators and administrators, and then also increasing access to quality early education. So my first solution, culturally competent professional development for teachers. I included a quote from Howard from our course text, just highlighting that teachers who understand where their students are coming from and how to use their knowledge are making learning more accessible for their students. And then in turn, their students will have better outcomes. And I will show you a quick video.
I would encourage educators to not only ask parents about their children or their own personal family culture, but be willing and open to hear from them. Develop an environment, foster an environment where parents feel comfortable enough to share with you, because our children come from backgrounds that may or may not look like your own. Let's say the children in your classroom are from a different side of town from where you are, but you haven't exposed yourself to that environment or that culture. I encourage teachers to go to the restaurants in that neighborhood, to go to, the movie theater, whatever it is in that area, so that they can immerse themselves in someone else's culture, and not always expecting the parents or the students to be immersed into our own culture, but just take the time to look to see, what are the differences, what are the special things that make that child who he or she is. I had a young child in my classroom, and she never made eye contact with me. And as a young teacher, I thought, wow, she's not being very respectful. Look at me. But I took a step back and I looked at who she was. Where did she come from? And what were the cultural practices within her family? And then I invited her mother in. It was at that point that I realized that she didn't give her mother eye contact. And that was a cultural piece, because it was a sign of respect that she didn't look her mother eye to eye. And here I am as the teacher forcing her, look me in my eyes when you talk to me. So we need to find that balance between what are the expectations in the household and what are the greater expectations within our school and in our society, and not try to change our students to have them belittle their own culture, but value both of them at the same time.
I just wanted to show that video as it leads right into one of my recommendations, and that is providing professional development for teachers at the federal and state level. And that would be the most practical solution, as most teachers are required to do professional development anyway. Just to be able to learn more about even little things like students not making eye contact, or dual language learners maybe having a period of silence when they start in your classroom. Things that at least I personally did not learn in my teacher preparation courses, but I have learned over the years. I think those are important to note when you start teaching. This professional development should be based on current research, and it should be less broad and more targeted. Again, specifics, things that you'll see in the classroom and strategies to use with those learners. And then I have at the bottom there to add that there should be conferences or exchanges between states, so that those groups of people, educators, admins, can gather and exchange ideas that have worked for them in their diverse classrooms. And in addition to that, teacher preparation coursework should include teaching placements that are diverse, and then courses that touch on all aspects of diversity, including aspects that we've learned in this course. And so my second recommendation is that we increase access to early childhood, so that kids have access to those high quality teachers who have been through that professional development. That would require federal funding, that would require states to work together to provide a seamless services for families. And then moving on to final thoughts, I wanted to end with this quote. Again, I'm not going to read it to you, but basically highlighting that diverse classrooms, students are getting more out of those classrooms, especially as far as language skills are concerned. So diversity in a classroom is important, and teachers should be prepared to teach those learners so that they can have better outcomes. So just to sum it all up, I am proposing that we break down barriers for our diverse learners as far as accessing early childhood education, that we increase the amount of programs that we have, and that we support our teachers in those programs by providing professional development. If you have any questions, you can email me, and these are my references. Thanks for watching.